Hey everybody, welcome to the shop. 10 rules or guidelines that I use to stop wrecking my wasteboard and stop replacing it because it's a pain in the neck. Hey, thanks for checking out the Hinkle Shop. We sure hope you enjoy this video. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you find some value in this video, maybe learn something, and maybe have some laughs along the way. Now, if you'd like to see how I freshened up my wasteboard from what the thumbnail looked like, stick with me after these 10 and we'll go through that process to show you how you can make wasteboard with J-channel on the cheap. Now, number one rule. Quite honestly, it's the most simple rule, but when you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. But the number one rule is don't cut through your stock into the wasteboard. Ever. Don't do it. Find ways to not cut through your stock. I don't care if it's a complicated cut, a basic cut, any kind of a cut on your CNC. Do not go through your stock and into the wasteboard. So how do we do that? Let's start with the first step, or the first thing that I recommend and that I use so that I don't go through the dumb thing and into my wasteboard. Number one is use an onion skin. Not that kind of onion skin. The kind of onion skin where you leave a small amount of material in the bottom of your stock. Like this. After you have that small amount of material on your stock, you'll use a flush trim bit with a bearing on the top or the bottom, doesn't matter which. You either flip your stock over upside down or you keep it right side up and you trim off that little bitty strip that you've left on there. And guess what, folks? No sanding required after you do that. Okay, that's rule number one. What's rule number two? Rule number two is get yourself a pair of these digital calipers. Always, always measure the stock that you're going to cut on your CNC before you do your programming, before you turn the machine on, any of that. Make sure that you're measuring the thickness of that stock. If you program for a 0.75 piece of material and it happens to be 0.74, and you say, okay, I'm going to go through that stock a thousandth of an inch, you just went into your wasteboard and ruined it. Don't do that. Measure your stock before you program, before you turn the CNC on, before you turn your spindle on. Make sure that you're not going to bury that bit into your wasteboard. If you're going to plane off or surface your material, great. Plane it off, surface it, get it flat, use your planer. Use the CNC. Again though, before you turn that mill on to do a pass or a cut through, make sure you've measured how thick your material is. Number three, that's quite simple. Suppose you do have a complex cut that you need to go through. There's no way you're going to go over to your bandsaw or your jigsaw and cut this thing out. It's just way too complicated. That's what the beauty of the CNC is for. Very easy. Find yourself a thin piece of plywood, just 1/4 of an inch thick, something like these guys here, and you put that down underneath your stock. It'll clamp flat, it'll hold everything in place. You can cut through and cut 20 thousandths through the thickness of your material because you've already measured it, you know how thick it is. 20 thousandths, go into this guy here. You haven't wrecked an expensive wasteboard and cost yourself a whole bunch of time to make it over again. That's number three. Number four, when you're cutting things out, give yourself an extra 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch all the way around the outside of the stock. Room for your clamps so that you don't run into them. Is that going to make it so you don't cut through your stock? Not necessarily, but if you leave yourself that 1 inch all the way around, then you can put that piece of wood underneath it and know that you've got secure clamping and you won't wreck your wasteboard again. Number five, use the wasteboard as a zero. Now I don't typically do this. I always use the top of the material as my zero. But if you zero off the top of your wasteboard, the machine will stop there and not go through your zero. Pretty straightforward. There's people on YouTube that'll show you how to do that. I don't do that. I follow these guidelines for myself and I don't go through into my wasteboard. Number six, rarely used, but you can put the bit in the machine, leave it slightly loose, drop the spindle all the way to the bottom, which will slide the bit all the way up, then raise the bit just a little bit, put a piece of paper or something underneath it, then tighten it down, then go back up, re-zero, do all of your steps that you would normally do, what will happen is that CNC spindle will not be able to go down and go in and reach your wasteboard, and thereby it will protect it. It's kind of a crazy way to do it. If you just do the other steps, you wouldn't have to do that. So we've gotten 1 through 6. Let's move on to number 7. Okay, number 7. Also rarely used, but like using your laser, if you have one, you can create a bridge. By that I mean you'll put down 2 pieces of wood on the outside, or possibly 3, that raises your stock up off of your bed. 1/4 of an inch. Raise it up 1/4 of an inch, clamp it down. That'll allow the bit that you're using to cut your stock out with to pass through, not touch the wasteboard, but will completely free up your stock. Now if you do this, I highly recommend that you're using bridges or tabs, because the piece is going to drop when you cut it loose. So again, use some bridges, use some tabs, good to go. One thing I do not recommend, and this is just personal preference, I do not recommend 2-sided tape underneath your projects to hold them in place. I've ruined far too many now to use that again. We're not going to go double-sided tape. Add the extra border, clamp the things down, rock and roll, you're golden. Number 8, for a cut loose or straight cuts, use the table saw, use your bandsaw. Why would you use a CNC to cut straight cuts when you can quickly do it on your bandsaw or on your table saw? Okay, that's number 8. Number 9, create a template pattern with your CNC, HDP, and then use the patterning bit or the flush trim bit and follow it to cut out every one of your pieces of stock thereafter. If you're doing multiples, that's what this is handy for. Now yes, the CNC, you can load them in and you can cut them out. It's faster to cut one pattern than take that pattern to your bench with your stock and handheld run your router around or use your router table. Now we're up to number 10. Number 10 is the most important rule of all of these rules. And I hope you've stuck with me this far. If you've gotten any value out of this, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel grow. Number 10 is very simple. Go back to step number 1 and don't ever cut through your stock. Find ways to not cut through it. Put a piece of board underneath it. Lift it up in the air. Cut it short a few thousandths of an inch and then take it off with a flush trim bit. As I've said, just find ways not to cut through your stock. So again, I hope you found some value in this. I hope you've learned something with these simple 10 steps to protect your wasteboard. And if you follow along and keep going with me, I'm going to show you how we can make a wasteboard that's pretty cool. Got some dog holes in it for these pieces of PVC. Also, it's got channels in it for T-track. I said J-channel in the beginning. It's T-track on the cheap. So thanks for watching. Stick with me. Let's make some J-track, T-track for your wasteboard. Alright, so here we have a typical wasteboard that's seen way too much use. It's been abused, accidents have happened, miscalculations, I've run into screws, etc., etc. We have to get rid of this. So the first thing I need to do is slice up some new boards to put on here, and there's some things that you have to do in order to make these things work with Johnny bolts. My own T-track system that works with these guys. Let's cut some up. Alright, so here we have a typical wasteboard that has gone past its usefulness. I've made mistakes, I've gone too deep, I've miscalculated, etc., etc. First thing we need to do, get some new boards on the top of this thing so that we can show you the rules or tell you about the rules that I'm going to use in the future so that I don't do this anymore. When we make these boards, I make my own channel with them so that I can use Johnny bolts. Slide the Johnny bolt in, and I can use my 3D printed clamps, and that's part of the rules. So let's cut some of these guys out. I'll show you how you make these grooves in here, and then we'll continue to show you the rules and the steps and tell you the rules and the steps. Okay, first things first. As I said, we need new slats for the top of the table. And to get those new slats, I'm going to use my new grid cutting system for my sheet goods. And as you can see, I hope you can see, it is wooden sawhorses, notches cut out of them, 2x4s on the top. We can cut right across, right straight through the material using my track saw. When the 2x4s get wore out, we'll just simply replace them. I need to take the measurement for the length of those, transfer it to here, and I'm going to nip them off, and then we'll go to the table saw and cut the slots. 4-inch strips with a little help from my friend here. All right, here's the secret sauce for the frugal or cheap guy J channel. Raise your blade just 1/8 of an inch, maybe just a hair a little higher than that. Slide your panel fence over or your normal fence, and we're going to take 2 blade widths off. 1, move it over, 2. You don't necessarily have to use a panel fence, but the object is to take just a little bit off, so that when you put your Johnny bolt in there, the bolt will slide between the 2 pieces, but it won't turn. Alright, this here's my little test rig to see if these guys fit. Basically all these are is sitting here to keep that bit from falling over when I put the clamp on it. I've got the 2 pieces squeezed together. That is actually the distance that it will be apart on the machine. So does the bolt fit if we put it in the right direction? Pretty good, and it will not turn once you screw these things down. Let's proceed. Sometimes it pays to understand electrical stuff. Neutral wire on the drill press came off. No work. I can fix that. Alright, first set of holes go 1 inch in from each side on each end. So I have my stop block in place. I can drill that hole, take this out, flip it over, put that back in, drill it again, flip it over end for end, do the same thing, and I'll get the first 4 holes complete. Alright, I got my spade bit in so it gives me a flat bottom hole, and I've got my stops in so that it'll only go in halfway into the board. Like that. So as it turns out, I don't need the stop block on the other end. I can hold this and it will center itself in the hole, slide it along, get the next one, get the next one, get the next one, and flip it over and make it happen. The battery had gone dead on my camera and I didn't notice when I was doing the placing of these boards. So the process is pretty simple. I removed all the boards but the last one on the far right. I sanded off all the nubs that are created from putting screws in MDF. I then used 2 end mills, 1 on each end, against the last strip that I left in place. Putting the new strip next to the old strip, the end mills kept the gap correct, screwed it down, and hopscotched across the board. I also clamped the board across the front to maintain the forward position of the boards before I screwed them down. What you saw me doing there in the beginning was making marks to ensure that I surfaced the board completely flat. In other words, hit every spot. I then calculated where I wanted my dog holes with a tape measure, transferred that to the best program there is, Carveco, and we cut these in. 1.06 diameter for a 3/4 inch piece of PVC. There it is, a nice new pretty wasteboard on the cheap. I hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope if you follow those rules, it'll help you out so that you don't have to keep doing this over and over again. Now, are you going to make mistakes? Yeah, I make them all the time, and I go into this thing, and I don't want to, but I do. However, we're fresh, we're clean. Let's see how long I can make it last. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this video. As always, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.